big guns.
Well, we'll see. So Jason Henbest, Director, Post-Payment Audit at Walmart. Been there just a few years with our little company. I'm a little bit of a rarity in that I grew up in Northwest Arkansas. So when you come and you're visiting there and people from all over, it's changed just a little bit in 45 plus years there in Northwest Arkansas. But yeah, so thank you guys for putting this on too, because I've enjoyed the conversations just in the first 24 hours being here and going through the conversation with folks. So certainly learning stuff. My objective here today is to kind of share a little bit about our journey and how the team has grown since I got it, and lessons along the way. So you learn from your mistakes, and I've learned a lot. So I'm going to share a few of those today. But yes, thank you for putting this on. I'm interested in keeping kind of the conversation going here with my friends in the industry. I think it's good stuff. Our inaugural Audicon.
That's right. This is the first one. You're all committed for the rest of your lives. Yeah.
We were at the first.
That's right. Chuck's retired. You still have to come.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah. You never get away. Yeah. You can't get out of this group. So yeah, I took some notes from some of the conversation we had. So yes, I have a team of folks in Bentonville that do post-payment audit. I'm Director of Post-Payment Audit. I have a peer that handles accounts payable, peer that handles procurement side and those operations, just post-payment audit, just on the indirect spend, GNFR side of the house. We got 9 folks on my team in Bentonville. When I started with the team about 6 years ago, it was 4, grown to 9, and I actually got 10 folks in Gurgaon and Delhi as well that are dedicated to our post-payment audit efforts. So we've grown, and it's been challenges, which I'll share a few, but feeling good about where we are, and great partners with Audit Tech helping us for sure. So just before post-payment audit, I had the procurement operations team too, just as we kind of brought in SAP and started rolling with that. I had procurement operations team responsible for getting POs approved, contracts signed, that sort of thing. So got exposed to that part of the business and learned a little bit about that, and then inherited the post-payment audit team about 6 years ago. And at that point in time, we were primarily just auditing in a couple of business areas. Mostly in the technology or facilities maintenance. That was really the only places we played, and we've grown since then. The key person in all of this, and part of our process, has been that business stakeholder. I would call the business owner. That's your key stakeholder in this audit process. I look at them as kind of judge and jury. And this is the person that owns that relationship day to day with that supplier, who's making the decisions, who's bidding out the work, who's holding them accountable to meeting the things they agreed with in the contract. That's important. This is your most important stakeholder person in the process. I feel like we're going to come to them as an audit team and present a case, right? We're going to go do some work, and we're going to come back to the business owner and say, here's what we found. Here's the gaps. Here's the exposure. And here's what we feel like is owed back to our company. Now the supplier's they're going to have their say also. They're going to present their case, and ultimately the stakeholder is they hold the decision, at least in our space.
Jason, you claim that your stakeholders are phenomenally exposed to paying for profit.
Yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
You know, it's not going near as deep as you have, but they're concerned about how we do it.
Yes.
Not running it.
Yes, absolutely. Right at the heart, they know that we need to do this and say, we're not out to get a supplier. We need our suppliers. We need to work together and make money for both companies. And we need that. We need partnerships, not just transactional relationships. So they do know that's important, but it's also business. And we want to make sure our efforts here are to make sure that we got what we paid for. And both companies did what we agreed when we signed the contract. That's business. So do the business stakeholders? Yeah, sometimes they're a little uneasy, but you know what? We were talking this morning. We haven't lost anybody yet. So I get to wear a salesman hat inside my own company a lot, go around and say, we should be auditing your suppliers. We should be auditing yours. I said, okay, give me a couple. Let me show you. And each one of those groups has just, like I said, we haven't lost anybody. I still haven't gotten into all the areas. I'm still going back to them manually and saying, look what we've done, and we could do the same for you. Some of them have started to let us in. Some of us are still a hard no, but he said, we haven't lost anybody. I don't think we turned anybody away because, you know, everybody's probably got on their goals list about reducing expenses. And that's what, you know, and that's what we're doing. That's the game. So it's a mixed, they don't like me to rock my relationship with my supplier that I've built over time. I say, I understand that. And I want you, and that's a valuable thing. I want you to keep that relationship with your supplier. Well, let's also be clear that, hey, this is business. And we could respect them holding us accountable to the same. We signed a contract too, we need to honor it. A few more pieces here. Oh, so it's been a challenge to identify even who that is at time. Who is that decision maker? Who is the business owner? It's handy when you can go in and look at who signed the contract, who approved the PO, who approved that invoice. That can lead you to your business stakeholders internally. It's not perfect, but it's usually a good lead. I promise you, if you call the supplier and tell them you're going to audit them, they're going to call the stakeholder, and then the stakeholder is going to call you. It's not perfect, and that may not be how you want to go about it, but we've had to. I think we've done that a couple of times. Or you learn about more stakeholders. They go, yeah, you've been talking to Jeff and Ryan all this time, but there's also Dave that has this other little part of that relationship that tends to come up, or a centralized sourcing and negotiating vendor management office. Those folks are key in that stakeholder role too. That sometimes come out later in the process. Hopefully you get them early on. So yeah, we certainly had those same challenges, just identifying who the stakeholders are. That will get easier over time because they're going to talk to each other, and they're going to be a promoter for you until they're friends. If you're like us, we're keeping great records of who our contacts were in previous audits, so we know who to go back to. But I'll pause there. If anyone's struggling with the same thing or determining who their stakeholders are, is that a challenge?
I think it's a common, from an outside perspective, I think it's a common issue. And I think if you don't have the right stakeholder, you find out really quickly when an issue is identified. So there's a potential overbilling, there's potential overcharge here. And suddenly the person who you have as a contact doesn't feel comfortable pushing it, or because they realize it's not their relationship. So it's hard to move past, it's hard to remediate and actually resolve issues if you don't really have the person that's the right person to deal with it.
Right. No, that's true. They point to someone else, and they'll be worried about how much time it's going to take on their part. They're conscious of time too. So we present to them too that I don't want to take any more of their time than I have to. I just need to know where your contracts are and who you want me to audit. And that you're going to stand with me at the end. You're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with me at the end of this when we present back to the supplier and say, you owe us this back. That's all I need. If you're not willing to give me that, I say, tell me now, and that's fine. I'll go audit somebody else. But I need to know those things now. We're not coming in to wreck their relationship because the audit's going to be done. We're going to go audit somebody else, and those two have to stay together. That stakeholder and the supplier, they've got to keep working. We're not trying to damage that. So there can be some uneasiness of that, but again, we've done a great job, I think, of building trust with them. And Auditech certainly presents that too with them, that professional. Hey, we're not out to get them. We're out to see, did we get what we paid for?
You find your stakeholders don't really know what's in the contract or what's going on with the contract?
Yeah, more.
So I was just, how that
More, it happens more often probably than we would like. It's not a lot, but what happens is you'll have turnover right? And managers and trade owners, they've changed. Everybody moved one seat to the right, and there's their new team. You probably didn't have that conversation when someone said, here's all the contracts you own now, make sure you understand them well, right? That doesn't happen. So what we'll find is once we've started this with them, then they go, oh, okay, we better go make sure we understand all of them. And that's where I might need some of that stakeholders' time during the process, just to align that the contract says this, and we're seeing this, and the supplier views it this way. What do you say? Did you tell them to act differently than the contract says? Well, shame on us. We should have updated our own contract. But we'll honor that if that's what you told them. The supplier did what you said. We should honor that. But we need to get our contracts similar. We can only audit to the contract. It does happen. I would like to say we're getting better at it. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but better. Yeah.
Modified in an email.
Yes, we can find that. Yeah, we'll conduct a contract compliance audit. We have the original, MSA or amendments, and then there's like, oh, but then there's this. All of a sudden, they come up with this email with an agreement that someone on our side, we take different terms. So we have that upfront in the conversation when we kick off the audit. We say, are there any other agreements, emails, that you want to present to us now, so that we don't go auditing down a trail that we should.
Absolutely. No, it's very important. We do the same. Is this everything? Is this all of them? Right, for sure. Say again. Oh, which areas?
Which areas?
Sure. Well, I can jump into that now. So it was facilities maintenance and technology were the largest groups then. We've slowly started to add more. A lot of it's still in that realty space, supply costs. We've got into some other departments. Technology, the tech spend has had a lot of technology advancements. It's kind of negated some of the need for audits,
When you
frankly.
say tech, I see.
Professional services or not hardware, software so much, but on the services side, just other tools that have been brought in that have kind of tightened up a lot of that spend, frankly. And we've got some other, I'd say, contract opportunities to correct on our side. Electronic timesheets, even for the services contractors, it's kind of, I don't have to audit there so much. Sorry, guys. I don't have to audit there so much. But yeah, then I could get into some of the other areas where we're in today. Again, with the stakeholder part too, I would, as high as you can go on that org chart to have your conversations, obviously the better. And sometimes they'll lead you to who those business stakeholders are. Once you get that SVP level, CFO, C-suite folks talking, they will tell you. They're a pretty easy sell. Hey, we're going to recover funds and it's going to pay for itself. Oh, good. Okay, go talk to David and he's going to give you a list of suppliers and you go audit them. Boom, that's easy. So have courage, I guess, to go up that org chart as much as you can, get your boss with you and go up there, and it'll lead to identifying those stakeholders. We start off with that call as well, make sure they're aligned with us, and yes, where are all the contracts? Make sure we know all of them. Any other agreements, anything that's not in the contract that supplier is operating by, it saves us lots of time in the end.
You have a central contract repository where it's
Mhm. It's a yeah, it's a work in progress. Most of them at the corporate and the home office, yes, they're in between right now, transitioning from one to another. Not that we never find them outside of that, but it's more and more rare. And there's been a lot of compliance, push to say we've got to have all these in one place for just that reason. I'm just doing a post-payment audit. There's certainly things more, critical and serious than that, where we've got to know where all the contracts are.
There are certain people that can execute contracts.
Each one of the business areas will have their own kind of signing authority and what level they want to see, depending on what the contract is, the amount of spend and what it's for. Right now, they're kind of governing themselves with who can sign and who can't, say, and how much of a PO can you approve, that sort of thing. Which we use that in reverse. If someone wants to kind of waive an audit claim and say, well, we're not going to pursue that. I need to know what your title is, and can you approve that much spend because you're about to waive that much recovery? That's helped us, and was that answer to?
Oh, you know, we've gone through different stages of that, so I was just curious what.
Oh, we sort of, yeah.
Corporate level and how that.
It's evolved for sure. I think it's changing, and now I know we've all got that same expense focus, and I think that audience is going to narrow in who can approve who approves spend. It's fine with me.
That's where we're unique. How I characterize it. You have one contract. Everything goes through the CFO. He doesn't sign it. But it certainly narrows and gives you a lot more focus on what gets done and what doesn't get done.
Absolutely right. I remember when I had the procurement team, every tech contract was signed by one of 5 SVPs for all of, yeah, it was very different. It was much more focused. Let's say, so we've started up that call with them, got to make sure they understand the process, make sure they know we're not going to take up a lot of their time. Keeping them engaged. We've learned to be sort of crisp, let's say, in communications with them. You want to tell them everything, but not too much, just enough so they know that we're making progress, and not give them necessarily chapters to read every week on an update, but keeping them engaged. You know, what's important? Where are we at right now? What does the exposure look like? How close are we getting to recovery? Keeping that crisp, it builds a trust with them too, that we're not going to take up too much of their time in the effort. I called out there about, again, areas that have kind of resisted us. We keep going back to them. The walls are sort of closing in on them because we keep winning over. And like I said, nobody's left us. So they're dwindling in numbers, the ones that don't want us. I say don't want us. They feel like maybe they've got a process on their own that they're doing and they feel like it's adequate. And maybe it is. So we just tell them, just give me a few. Give me 3 or 4 of your suppliers. Let's do a proof of concept. And then let's compare what we do as an audit with what you're already doing. If you feel like it's better, and if it's better, then it's better, and we'll know that, and that's great. If it's not, well, let's talk again. Maybe we can do some more. We've won a few areas like that lately. Some are still no, but we're gaining them. We're gaining on them. I guess the last thing on that, I would say that piece does take time. We chased a lot of these areas for quite some time before we got in a little bit. But it was the work, right? We're showing them, hey, we're doing this work and we're bringing value back to the company. They really don't have any, why would you not do that? Why would you not do it? So it really came down to, is your process better or different than ours? We always win.
Supplier pushback you get.
Supplier pushback?
I know that if someone says Walmart is here, that leverage is different than just size wise. So I'm just curious when you all are that here it is, how does that conversation go?
My dream is that they're excited about it. When I call them, I know I'm not their favorite phone call. When I come calling the suppliers, say we're going to do, I know, because I'm going to take up some of their time too. They're probably worried. Most of the times you're going to find stuff that they didn't realize they were doing, right? Either way. And so on one hand, I can say, well, it's for your own good. I know that doesn't work. That doesn't work right off the bat when I say, let's find these problems when they're this big and not when they're this big. So if we don't go digging into those things and find them now, and you repeat it, even unknowingly, not using the F word, the unknowing over a period of time, now it's a bigger problem. What if we had found this 2 years ago when it was this big? Plus, I want them to see that as a grade almost at the end of the audit. Let's grade that supplier. How well prepared were they for the meetings? Did they show up to the meetings? Were they respectful at the meetings? Are they good at accounting? Does the practice look well? They understood what that contract says and we're on the same page. That can go a long way, even when there was just a whoops, right? We overcharged you here and yeah, our mistake. I'm hoping they see that as a grade for when new business comes along from the procurement team. Hey, who scored well on the audit? Oh, this one did. Okay, then let's talk to them. We're not there yet, but we're on that path, to go grade the supplier. To answer your question, it varies. Everything from the supplier was ready for us. They came onto that first call almost like, we know what you're gonna ask, and here it is. And I've been called every name in the book. I got about 30 seconds into a conversation and I heard them all. And they don't do business with Walmart anymore. That's for sure. So those are the extremes. It's usually in the middle of, okay, they want to keep that too. And they want to come show, hey, we're on the same page. We're doing what you expected when we signed the contract. And we're looking for our grade, want my A.
As a follow-up, when you have those bad conversations, which I are very few, but when those come up, do you typically find that that's just the audit, or is there normally something else in the relationship that makes them comfortable being that aggressive?
There's the latter. There is usually something's gone awry in that relationship probably before. Something else deeper is there, which may have just been a miscommunication that didn't get resolved. That's where I lean on that stakeholder too, to help. If I come back to them during the course of an audit, it's usually either to help clarify terms in the contract or nudge the supplier a little bit to respond to us, get us the data that we asked for. But yeah, she's like, I don't know. Do I have to do this? Yes, you have to. We've learned that some of them have been clever about trying to negotiate the audit clause out. That's one of the first things my team does when they go look, just make sure that it is there. It doesn't give the supplier the right to overcharge us, but it's certainly more handy if there's an audit clause in the contract, or they certainly can resist more, I would say, but that's where I kind of go, okay, but come on. If I kind of put it to them this way, if you're right, there's no audit clause in there, you're not required to do that per the contract. Then I'm going to be forced to go do my own analysis on my own and come back to your business stakeholder and say, here's what we found, and they chose not to participate. Maybe they will now, but there's certainly an effort to get audit clauses in all contracts for sure.
We actually worked with legal and procurement to be part of the process, to come up with the best language.
Same, yeah. So what I was gonna say is they run by me any kind of amendments that they're making. They're like, they want to edit the wise the number of years, the look back. That I think that's helpful on a go forward.
Contracts on your paper, then?
Sorry.
Are they on your paper? I mean, from.
Depends on the category. So, next hour. Yeah, exactly.
Just one other point, I was kind of aligning with your business stakeholders. If they start to show some resistance, let's say, learn what their goals are. They've probably got it in their goals about reducing expenses. And so you're going to align with that and to help with that. So what else is on their goal plan? what else are they after? And maybe you can help with that too. I would say, again, that you'll build momentum in that over time. You're gonna build promoters out there because of just the process itself, and they're gonna tell their friends. That's what we've seen. It can be slow and frustrating at times, but eventually they come around.
One thought is on the qualitative aspects. Do they show up to the meeting? Are they prepared? Things of that nature. You know, tracking that, like I think you are tracking that probably, getting that into the AI in some way is the variables, some of the variables that lead to recoveries over time could be helpful. Just one note. Curiosity, because I used to do a variety of supplier audits of advertising agency firms with the company. Very unique kind of group, but we told them, the supplier, and this may just be common practice, we're going to come to you first with anything we find, just obviously to make sure that, you know, we identified it. And maybe you can't do that, but I always like that approach. Like it just made them less standoff ish about the whole audit. When we said, you know, whatever we find here, we're going to come to you first, make sure you're okay with it before we go back to quote unquote the client in your case.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I don't know if you can do that, but that's something you may want to go back to the stakeholder to understand it first, but.
And I think what Walmart does instead, it's close to that. It's not, because obviously the key stakeholders are gonna be up to speed on things. But it's that, you know, if we find something, it's not final, right? Like if we find this is a potential issue, we're gonna raise it, we're gonna have the discussion, we're gonna take the feedback, you're gonna have a voice in this. That doesn't necessarily speak to the kind of the order of when people will know things, but you know, nothing's just gonna be, hey, this is what we were found, final version, you know, it's the Bible and it's done and we're ending it, right? And, you know, making sure they understand that, you know, we are gonna look for feedback, we are gonna look to have you as part of the process. And that feedback, whatever it is, will also be communicated up as an auditor. That feedback will also be communicated up to the stakeholder. Like you're going to have a voice in this process because everyone gets a little claustrophobic when they feel like they're going to be forced into something and not be able to have a voice and be able to kind of share their positions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. Right. Going back to I go into the business first so that I know they support and agree what we found, because at that point, I've prepped them for that early in the process to say, here's the 3 or 4 things we found at a first glance. Before we dig into these things deeper, are you going to support? Because sometimes they say, no, well, you're right. The contract says this, but we told them to change. Okay, fine. We'll cross that off and dig the other 3. I like to go back to them and say, okay, now it's time, business. Here's what it really is. Here's what it's going to be. It's a number this long, and we're about to deliver some concerning news to them probably. But yes, great point. Having the suppliers got a voice there. I want them to tell us why this happened. You know, are we missing something? There was some other agreement that came up we didn't know about, or you were told different in an email or whatever it was. Like I want to, not out to get them. I want to make sure we got what we paid for. And I'm not looking to get stuff for free. I don't want them to work. They did their job. We need to pay for it. So we certainly want to hear them. And it's helpful when they're cordial and timely and responsive all along the way. I think I kind of talked through this a little bit with communication and trust. But one last point I think came up was, where does the money go? I think was a concern or a question in some places. So we've evolved in this as well. So when we first started with the team, we were trying to get recovery dollars back to the department or the cost center or wherever they came from. Well, that money came from here, right there. Well, that can be cumbersome and complicated. And I got service cost over here, and I got hardware cost over there, and then the stores are funding this and the DC's funding that. There's a lot of algebra. I'm not excited to do any more algebra anymore. So, but that became complicated and putting the money back. We had a conversation with the CFO for the corporate, and I explained all this to her, and she said, stop doing that. You put it right here. All your audit recoveries are gonna go into, I'm gonna give you an account and they all go right here and I'll decide, she'll decide what happens from there. And it greatly simplified everything for us. So now that we performed an audit, we got the recovery, where does this money go? Right there. And then the CFO decides what happens. I don't need to know, I don't have to know. That's in the specific to audit recoveries, but it saved us a lot of admin work, chopping up all the money and putting it in classification, different jail accounts, whatever, and go one spot.
Where that money's going.
Yeah. Good questions. On occasion, some of that was our selling point at first was, hey, I'm gonna put it all back and anything you can do. Well, CFO said, no, because they're covering up a budget miss they had somewhere else. So don't do that. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so you put it all right here and I'll decide. So what I had to do in those conversations when it came up, I said, well, she said to do it this way. All you gotta do is tell her, and if she tells me different, you can have it. I've never had that happen one time. So you can convince the CFO, it all needs to come back to you, that's fine. And that's all for US. We've done some in other international markets, that's a different, but they have their own accounts for that. But usually just saying, well, if the CFO agrees, I'll put it wherever you want. And haven't heard back on that before, but.
So I have a follow-up question. You brought up the word budget. Are your recoveries repeatable enough to where you have a recovery budget?
Yeah. So this is where I get into the conversation of a plan versus a forecast. Those are two very different things. Yes, yeah, we're on that journey too. So we have to be cautious. I say, here's what I commit to. We're going to talk about productivity. And for my team, I can commit to a number of audits and I can tell you what that plan is and how much spend that is that's going to go through these filters. And history will tell us this much spend audited is going to produce this much in recovery. That's that's the forecast. And right? Like, was it going to rain last night for the ball game? No, it wasn't in the forecast. And there it came. So yeah, I get to have fun conversations with them. I was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're on that path. So my bosses are probably on me for being overly cautious about it. I'm just trying to be real. Like, don't get too, count them before they hatch, so to speak. So, yeah.
Our side of the house becomes a little bit more predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely lumpy on the GNFR or not pre-sale side. 80-90% of your recoveries are going to come in from 10 or 20% of your engagements. And the timing, the bigger ones take the longest. It's a lot easier to settle $10,000 issue than it is to settle a $1.5 million issue. Just, it's not as big of a deal. So
I think we're on that path too of maybe more often, auditing more often if we can, for that reason. Exactly. Yeah. Easier to have a debate over five figures than seven. You catch the yeah. So that's my slide deck there as far as kind of our journey. Well, look at that. I had it right almost.
Are you right on time?
Places you start to make headway beyond facilities and
Yeah, a few. It's still rather limited, but I'm not so sure about how we're going into the different areas quite right now. If that's maybe later. How's that? Is that fair? Can we sidebar that one? Yeah, for sure.
In general, on the GNFR side, one thing to look for is obviously services. So where you're having people perform labor, especially if that's tied to, a number of days, a number of hours, a number of occurrences. Those are the type of situations that often they get established with all good intention, but operations and billing sometimes start to diverge. And so, when someone misses a pickup or misses a service, and the billing person's used to billing every single day, sometimes they just continue to bill every single day, and that missed stop doesn't happen. So that's a big factor. And then obviously, anything complex around, cost pass through, cost plus. We're always looking on our side. This isn't a Walmart specific thing, so we're not told, on our side, we're just looking for where does the client not have visibility? Where does the stakeholder they don't have the information necessary to be able to know whether or not this clause is being followed or not. Those are much more likely to be big issues. And again, not because of anything fraudulent or nefarious, but just because over time, people, shift chairs, and the stuff that's not in people's face, they don't notice.
We've also seen clients use a lot, every client is different, but some use quite a few rebates in their negotiation process, hey, rebate tiers and that kind of thing. It's often a blind spot for the business users as far as getting all the detail that would go into that calculation. We have had a lot of success helping our clients in that space.
Particularly with volume buckets.
Yep. I'll give you a leading question.
Okay.
What are common concerns? So you go to a stakeholder
Mhm.
and they're like, I don't want to do it. What are the common, when there's a no, why is there commonly a no?
Typically it's worry that I'm gonna rock the boat with their relationship that they've built over time. So you're gonna talk about this is business, and I want them to keep that time. Hey, you're gonna take up too much of my time. So again, here's all I'm gonna need from you. Some clarification along the way, maybe some encouragement, understanding of what we're trying to do. If they point me where their contracts are and who they want me to audit, we'll do the work from there. It shouldn't be too much time. We try to be cognizant of that and not fatigue the stakeholder, like a constant, I'm on them every day with audits, space it out a little bit for them. They might be concerned that we're gonna find issues with their operation, with that stakeholder. We're gonna find, if you've been checking these invoices or if you had done this, so there could be some angst about that. Sorry, I don't know, I can commit, I can commit, I'll come back directly to you with what I find. I'm not gonna go tell your boss about it, but yeah, we may find that, hey, actually this operation wasn't happening right over here like it should have been. You guys should have been watching that. Other reasons, they may not be just a no, but it may be a pause. I don't want you to audit that supplier right now. We're in a big RFP, there's negotiations going on, or there's some other concern. Yes, I want to audit them, but give me 3 months, give me 6, 12 months. So we do that. We have a plan built out when we plan to launch audits. Sometimes it's just not a no, but not right now. Other resistance.
How often do you see the reverse of that, where maybe they do want to look at somebody because they do have a big project or new business?
That certainly happens as well. Now that we kind of built that promoter group out there that support, now they come to us. So I talked about wearing that salesman hat inside. I do that less now because we've built them, and now they come and they know I'm coming, in February as soon as fiscal year is done. Hey, what's our list? We got to build this out. So yes, now they're coming. And yes, sometimes it's a global investigation group and they say, hey, this looks odd. Could you go, run an audit there? So, but it's typically us presenting back, going just by the spend list, and kind of spacing it out. Let's take a few of the top 10, a few of the next 10, a few of the next 10, and kind of circle back to it. But that's true. Yeah, now they know, hey, let's have them look. It's just depending, hey, something's up here. Can you go look? Yes, we can. I chase all leads. I tell them, bring me your list. That certainly has built up more over time, for sure. That certainly wasn't happening in the beginning, but it does now.
Still bad with that. So I think, so a year ago, my profit recovery team became part of internal audit. And that's, I think, helped considerably as far as like, so we kind of rebranded ourselves as the internal audit recovery team. And I think that provided a lot of support from the organization, where it's not an option, right? You're gonna get audited, your supplier's gonna get audited, and, you know, we have the audit rights, and this is what we do. We have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure CDS
Yes,
paid, you know, dollars that they were supposed to pay and collected to collect. So, so that I think is helpful. I know that we're probably one of the first recovery groups to be in internal audit. I think typically it's in shared services, which is where we, you know, kind of were anyway. But it's unique, it's different, but it's helpful. And then we have that partnership on the VP level with procurement and AP and, you know, all the different areas, compliance.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I can recognize that journey as well. When I started with the team, we were in a shared services organization, sat there with payroll and accounts payable, and we're in the shared services. And along the way, we moved to the global tech organization, our technology group. I'm not sure why, but in December of last year, we actually moved back to the larger finance. We're in finance now, reporting up through the CFOs of the company. So you're right. The conversations are very different, and now that we're in that finance org, everybody's got those same goals: contracts, POs, vendor relationships, those sort of things. We're all talking the same thing. Very beneficial to us and my peers with procurement and accounts payable, the sourcing and negotiating team. We're all after the same thing, trying to centralize more of that work into our shop as opposed to out in the business areas. So their days are coming where they're not going to be able to say no. I'm still building momentum up to that. Yeah.
It takes time. I think it takes. That'll come and, you know, annual share outs that we do. Just a series of those, as you know. It would be a contract. But if there's ambiguity in the contract or something, or, you know, these are the key takeaways from our audits. We see that value adding back to the organization. So when you say, I need to audit 5 suppliers, like here, you know, we think these are good. And
Yeah.
Cause I mean, someone's gotta get in front of it to then give you all the support, right? So.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, you're having that, them, you know, having them be part of those shifts.
So the central GL or is it?
Oh, it depends. It's so for contract compliance, it's essential location. On the retail side, it goes back into the pricing area and the retail P&L. Yeah, it depends. But we track everything in Salesforce on our claims, so it doesn't matter where it goes in P&L. I can track it. I know exactly where it went. So when they say, "What have you brought in this year?" It doesn't matter where it is. I tell them no. It is. I like that. You know, your
Here, right here.
Keepers.
Yeah, challenging. Plus, we have different companies, you know, at NCBA, so we have to make sure it goes in the right.
You know, it's not that uncommon to report to internal audit, and I'm dating myself, but there used to be a book called How to Save Millions by the Institute of Internal Audit. But over time, it sort of just waned. You can still find it used online, But it was because when I started out in internal audit, we needed to kind of show our value back to the organization. And normally we would do the external auditor work as kind of like we'd be CPAs and we would do their work, and you would show a reduction in audit fees that you negotiated with the auditor. That kind of changed over time and got a bit independence issues around that and use of internal audits work for that savings. But that was like a very easy way to save money. I think in many ways we turned to some of the stuff, and why I even got into this in the first place was I was working in internal audit, and it gives you a natural cover, air cover, because you even have like a audit committee person on the board, so it really helps with.
Being part of internal audit, I told them, our chief audit executive, so how do you like being a part of it? And I said, I feel like I joined the mothership. Only because they're doing work. They're looking at, procedures, process, seeing where there's gaps, where there may be leakage, what they're doing. So as we read those audit reports where they might have, gaps or whatever, there may be leakage. So that's for us to kind of go, and now we've only been a part of it for 12 months. So this is kind of the space of it. So
We meet with them.
that's great. I mean, it's so beneficial to like connect the dots rather than to be kind of in a silo. Yes.
Like the lack of freedom, and it's like, because I think like the special ops group in a way is kind of fun to working with some cost recovery.
I think we
I'm
still
half kidding, sorry.
I think we still have flexibility. Like having an audit plan, I like. My people don't. I love that.
It's interesting because now I'm thinking, so we're very definitely not inside the internal audit team. So that comes up sometimes with the stakeholder too. I said, I'm not here to audit you. I'm not auditing you, colleague, and how your operation works. I'm going to tell you, you can talk to your boss about what I find, but I'll tell you, I've had to assure them of that sometimes. Like I'm looking at our payment with the supplier and those contracts.
And where do you go?
So Walmart has a chief procurement officer who then reports to the CFO. So we're finance procurement just in the past couple of months moved in. And so his objective too is to manage more spend through that central procurement office. Again, some of it's not, most of it's in there, but not all. So he's trying to win those as well, which then will lead to us, I think, being able to audit in those same spaces. I'm gonna roll with that for right now. He's got a pitch deck. I'm gonna use the same one and change it from managing spend to auditing spend and roll right behind him with it. So that's the plan.
If you were to go backwards and start the process over again, because your career had done some other things at Walmart, 6-7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
What do you think you'd do different as far as that salesman hat and as far as, because for every organization, you have to kind of go across the threshold of, we're going to do vendor audits. And at first you're like, what's that? Why we, and I think it's becoming more common, like, the vendors we're auditing, generally speaking, for all the different clients we're doing, they're generally more aware of what the intention is. I mean, it's less common that we come across like, wow, why are you doing this? This is weird. Like it's more accepted generally. But
Right.
What do you think you'd do differently as, if you were to go back 6-7 years?
That would have been handy to know going in that post-payment audit on the indirect spend side was not as mature of an operation, not just at Walmart, but across everywhere. I didn't know that 6 years ago. I didn't know anything about post-payment audit. That had not been my space. So that would have been handy to realize that earlier on. But what would I do different? Well, I'd say this, when we kind of won that business over, we'd had our sales pitch and said, yes, we want you to audit. I wouldn't attack the top 10 off the bat at the same time, saying the top 10 on their spend list. They're gonna say, yeah, I want you to audit my suppliers. Here they are. Here's 50 of them. And we were probably 2 ago, okay, take the top 10 and let's go based on spend, get the big ones now. As I mentioned earlier, you're gonna get 10 planes in the air and you gotta land 10 planes at about the same time. And that can be chaotic. Not all audits will end at the same, but it's gonna be pretty close. They're probably gonna run about the same timeline. So now you're trying to manage 10 big conversations. It might be easier to take 1, 4, and 7 and launch it, and then come back, then take 12 and 15 and 18 on the spin list, then come back, get 2 and 5, that sort of thing, stagger them out a little bit, is what I'm trying to say. That we learned that lesson, that was better. I can still get them all done in the same year, but I'm not trying to land them all in October or something like that, because I call that settlement and dispute phase at the end. That's the cussing and discussing phase. And so that lasts a lot longer when you're talking about 7 figures versus 4 in recovery. So that was a big one for us. So now I know they're going in, well, let's stagger these out. We can still get them done this year, but let's phase them in a little bit. For our planning, that was helpful. I had the procurement operations team. So I was doing the getting POs approved, managing that team, contracts into, it was a REBA at the time, getting the approvals done, who can sign it, keeping up with the changing signing authorities and those things that you probably have that too, and say, here's what your hierarchy looks like. And then someone says, well, I don't sign anything till Ben looks at it. But Ben doesn't report to you. Well, I don't care. I don't sign anything till Ben looks at it. Okay, so we kind of manage that. Before that, it was laptop support, workstation support, materials management. I started as an hourly associate in a warehouse, working summers between during high school. So yeah, I'm only like 40. So that's why I said, you know.
Shoot labor laws on.
Okay, I don't know.
One more question, Jason, because I think every organization has to navigate this differently, and that's the process of escalation. When you get to a situation where your stakeholder agrees with the audit finding, right? They understand, they agree, but the vendor has an ongoing different perspective, right? They dispute the finding. What have you learned along the way as far as, engagement of different folks at different times and kind of escalating to get the right support for the claim within your organization?
Yeah. It's handy when you know those big conversations are coming and get them go as courageous as you can be going up the org chart to get that support. Hey, here's what's coming. We've got one we're launching this year. My boss, right when I told him, he said, you need to go right now and talk to the VP of that area before we've even started, so that he knows this conversation's coming. It's going to be a big conversation in about 6 or 7 months, and he needs to know right now that there's going to be a finding. So, and being as prepared as you can, as early as you can. Here's the exposure that we're seeing early and making sure they know that. I mentioned using the approval flows there and how much, someone can approve it, spend authority. So that's been very handy for us. If someone wanted to waive a claim, right? I've been working with a stakeholder and they said, actually, no, I don't want to pursue that $100,000 claim. Well, can you approve $100,000 in spend because you're about to waive $100,000 in recovery? So I align that to signing authority based on title or whatever. Yeah.
Like pulling the legal organization into and kind of timing that piece as well.
Yeah. So if the supplier's let's just say you're right, they're being very resistant and not in agreement with what we're saying, but they're still not coming to the table with the number. Yeah, it's handy to go, okay, we'll engage the prospective legal within Walmart and say, what say you? What do you see? Here's our audit claims. Do you align? If they do, now we've got that we can present back to the supplier and say, look, we don't want to go into litigation ever. We're trying to avoid that. But we have grounds here. Our attorney's saying no, we're right. Our audit claims are right. Now, do you want to come talk and negotiate? You know, a number, especially if they've been at zero, when we know it's not zero. Our numbers here, they're at zero, we know that's not zero. So some getting that confirmation from internal legal folks to say, yes, the audit claims are valid. They match up with the contract. The payments were overdone. Sometimes that can bring the supplier to the table, go, okay, we don't want to go there either. So yes, let's come back and continue our cussing and discussing to get to that number. And again, like I said, when I go as high up the org chart as you can, sometimes those folks can have a quick conversation on a call. You get a couple of CFOs on the phone at the same time, they can get things done usually a little faster. Don't often have to go to that extreme, but legal a few times, again, just to make sure, hey, are you seeing this the same way we are? Here's how we're interpreting it, and almost always it is. Almost always they do. Yeah.
What is your audit timeframe?
I tell business be ready for 6 months. We've had them go 3 months. We've had them go well more than 12. Just depends. But so wrap your heads around a 6 month. The longest links I would say in that chain of events. One is just getting everybody on the phone at once right now, just in time. But then getting the information from the supplier, because I'm going to ask them for some data. That's usually, if they're going to stall or try to avoid, that's where it's going to be. So there's that. The audit process itself is going to go quick, right? As far as analyzing the data, and they're going to crunch the numbers, and then you're going to get to the debate, dispute, and settlement at the end. That's usually the two longest links there. So we're running probably about 6 months to get through them. Yeah. Yeah.
We did reports, but they were just a summary of where the findings. Ben nodded his head.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, be there.
Early on will kind of be the initial, say, here's what we found early in the review. So I want to come back and say, hey, we found these 3 problems. And it might be a surprise to your stakeholder and go, oh, I forgot the contract said that. Yeah, forget that. We need to go clean up our contract. A penalty for late invoicing. They say, well, the supplier's been doing that for 3 years. I'm not going to challenge them on it now. We should have called it out later. Forget that. Okay, we'll move on. So kind of that initial, just to make sure the stakeholder's still with me as we dig into and then at the end, certainly a debrief at the end. Here's what we found, because then we're going to have recommendations for them. Either you go change this language in your contract or add an audit clause or whatever, or here's a part of your operation you ought to pay attention to if you want to stop this from happening. We're after a couple of things. Certainly the dollars in recovery, that's great. But probably bigger is, what do I learn out of that so I can stop it from repeating? So it's a different conversation when I go back. We're getting into auditing suppliers a second, third time. So I come back to the business and say, you still haven't fixed this. We remember this audit? Yeah. Remember we told you? Yeah. Did you fix it? No. Please fix it. I appreciate you giving me more work to do and more, honest issues to go find, but I'd rather you fix this problem. And usually they do. Usually if they can, they're going to go change their ops or the contract. But yeah, we want that kind of final, plus for our records too. Help us on the next audit. What did we find last time? Let's see if you might as well start there. Here were the issues you found when you audited them 3 years ago. You might as well look there first. And, if not, hey, if your supplier fixed it, that's great. You got a partnership there. They took the advice and they went and fixed it.
Good stuff. Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate this a lot. Good stuff. Thank you.
I think we are at